Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story actually takes us outside Pennsylvania to our first place in Missouri. I'm Sarah.
And I'm David.
Let's get into it. This season, we're being sponsored by our friends at Haunted US. They travel the country bringing you real stories of American hauntings every Thursday at hauntedus.com. So, Pythian Castle in Springfield, Missouri. I think this might be my favorite ever ghost tour that I've been on, which is saying a lot because we've covered 75 plus places on the pod, and I've done a lot of stuff personally.
That's so cool. Tell me about it.
I will. So, I was visiting my grandparents with my brother and my cousin. Shout out to my family for supporting the pod. And we went to the castle as just something to do in the area on a Friday night. We had Tiff as our tour guide, and they were incredibly engaging and helpful. You'll hear me mention them a lot in the paranormal part of the story. They offered tons of answers to questions that I had and were really personable. So if you are able to schedule with Tiff and you go, definitely do. The history. So obviously, we love history and hauntings here, but the history of this place is just so interesting to me. I could go on and on about it, but I will try not to. Part of this information comes from the tour, and part of it comes from online research. So, Pythian Castle. It was built by a fraternal order called the Knights of Pythias or Pythias. I am not quite sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it both ways.
Pythagoreus?
No.
Oh.
And it was a home for their members. It was specifically meant to house orphans and the elderly, and it's a 40,000 square foot castle. So this place is massive. And it makes sense if you're a fraternal order and you want to be able to, have a lot of people there. It makes sense.
Translation: host sick parties.
Well, they did, actually, and we'll get into it. Mm-hmm. In 1913, it was originally constructed, and like I said, it's in Springfield, Missouri. It was later seized by the U.S. government during World War II, and they kept German, Italian, and Japanese prisoners of war in cells in the basement for interrogation.
Oh, that took a left turn.
It did, and that's why the history is so interesting to me, because in the upper floors, which used to be like the dormitories for the orphan boys and orphan girls that lived there, they had U.S. troops there recovering.
Really strange duality of use of space there.
It is very strange. And they also said on the tour that they would actually sometimes take the prisoners of war out to the bar with the U.S. troops. So I don't get it. Very strange.
As a form of building rapport with the prisoner in order to get them to tell them things? I'm
guessing. But for the U.S. troops that were recovering, they would often bring in entertainment, and the castle actually has its own theater. They would also host dances in the dining hall. So when you say parties, they definitely had them there.
I'm still just so hung up on the soldiers recovering upstairs, interrogating prisoners down below. Mm-hmm. But also, why? Is there a hospital nearby?
So they did have a hospital building. They took a building and turned it into a hospital, and it's behind the castle, and it's actually still owned by the U.S. government. And the official records of what happened there while it was owned by the U.S. government are not fully known because they're sealed confidential documents.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. The building is on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places, and it's built primarily out of limestone, which has been said to amplify paranormal activity. And there were really too many rooms to name. I'm sure we only scratched the surface on the hour-and-a-half tour that I did, but there was a bowling alley, a dining hall, theaters, dorms, etc. And interestingly enough, before it even served the military, over 100 people died there. And it was meant to be a home for the elderly, so that could be why, but that's a lot.
Well, how long was it a home for the elderly? I mean, theoretically, any old folks home long enough, you'll have that number.
Yeah, so it was built in 1913 and seized for World War II, so 30 years, let's say, a little over.
Yeah, maybe.
I guess that's only...
Spanish flu?
That's only 3 a year.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how much the Spanish flu killed people.
That's true.
There. If it was 1913, then World War I ended, Spanish influenza spread, big old pandemic.
Especially with people living in close quarters. It's a good point. So you can visit the castle for a variety of reasons currently. They have ghost tours, private investigations, historical tours, and even murder mystery nights. I think the ghost tour was extremely worth it because you get the history as well. I'm sure they go even more in depth in the historical tour, but Tiff did a really good job at setting the stage for the hauntings, which is obviously something important to us here at PIP. And I was reading reviews before we went because I was so excited and I wanted to curb my enthusiasm a bit. And people said that there was fake scares, like jump scares, as part of it, and that things were gimmicky. So I was worried that it was going to be like, we walk into this room and we set off a light that flashes or something. And there was one point of the tour where you go into the tunnels under, like, through the basement. And Tiff said, like, let me know when you guys get all the way to the end. And I thought, this is going to be the gimmick. And so my cousin and we ended up coming out of the tunnels. And I said to Tiff, is this the gimmick? And they had no idea what I was talking about. They were like, what gimmick? We don't do gimmicks. And they said I was welcome to stand next to them the rest of the night to make sure that they didn't hit any button or trigger anything and that it was all legitimate, which was comforting to hear. And in my experience, there was no gimmick.
Have they ever hosted like a haunted house or anything along those lines?
I don't think so. I mean, they definitely have that murder mystery night and that could be gimmicky, but I was specifically reading reviews on the ghost tour itself. And it was a pretty long tour, so for pretty inexpensive, it's definitely worth the money. They have EMF readers that you can rent there. I think they were either $5 or $10 to rent, but of course we brought our own equipment. Okay. Moving, what?
Our own equipment.
Yes.
Like, okay. I'm also wondering, though, if the jump scares, if that was ever a tour guide that was ever doing like a jump scare, like, or doing something like that is gimmicky. I mean, I guess that's the only other thing I could think of, if they actually don't have any props or anything that they're using, and they haven't done a haunted home or house. But
that's an interesting perspective. Yeah. So, moving to the paranormal. Where to start? If you thought the history was interesting, the paranormal parts are super interesting as well. So, when you first enter the castle, you enter into this big hall, and then they take you into a side room and you sit down and they give you some information on the castle, some of the history, just an overview. And then they do this really cool thing where they pull up pictures and or videos that people have submitted, actual visitors, and they say like, look, here is a spirit orb, here's this, here's that. So that was really cool to kind of set the stage and get everybody that might be less familiar with the paranormal know what they're looking for in their photos. So there was tons of spirit orbs. I mean, I had some in pictures that I took, but I didn't even send them in because they already have so many of them. And there were 3 specifically really cool photos that they showed us. And these all had actual figures in them. And again, these are just collected by people that go on the tour and then sent in to the castle, and they keep them all. So the first was a shadow figure that appeared to be running up the aisle of the theater, and you can clearly see the outline of a face, but the rest of it's blurred and it's completely black.
Do you think it was a horror movie they were running out of?
It's not a movie theater. It's like a stage show theater.
Oh.
So it's a horror play, maybe.
Do you think they just disliked it so much?
They just disliked the tour, yeah.
Or just like whatever play was playing in their life that they caught up and ran out?
Maybe. I think it was more of the spirit being like, oh my God, there's so many people here.
It's a good idea too.
Yeah. The second was a blurred full-bodied apparition, again in the theater. And this is when they informed us that the theater was incredibly paranormally active because they used to hold funerals in it.
Ah, there's my answer.
In addition to shows. So imagine like people would come in and sing for the U.S. troops, but then if someone died at the hospital, the next day you could have a funeral in that same room.
That makes far more sense. My question is going to be, why do we, every time we cover a theater, is it so incredibly paranormally active?
Yeah.
Most of them don't seem to have much justification. This one, a lot of justification.
Completely justified. Yeah. And a lot of different emotions, like positive of the theater, then grief and stuff. Just a lot of emotion, I think, tied to the space. So the third image was a tour group, and in the back there was this figure, and honestly it looks like Nosferatu to me. It was like a white head, like kind of hunched type figure, and it appears to be like part of the group but looking side-eyed at the camera, and they sent it in and said, was anybody like this on our tour group? I don't remember this person. And the people that led the tour confirmed no one that looked like that was on the tour. Which is crazy because it's like a full-bodied apparition. Clearly, you can clearly see the face. So I was hyped for the rest of the night, having heard all of this, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially with them being like crowdsourced images. That's fun. There's
one, you know, I didn't write it in my notes, but there is another one that was cool. In the tunnels where I said I was worried about it getting gimmicky, they have a haunting down there of Mr. Boots, which I'll talk about later on. And they have a photo of Mr. Boots at the end of the tunnel, like walking towards the person.
Can you like set the scene for what the tunnel looks like? Is it like a squared off tunnel? Is it a curved at the top?
Yeah, no, glad you
asked.
How
long is it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, actually. It's a service tunnel. So you have to go through the boiler room, I think it was, to get into it. And there's like pipes running, and it's lit up by yellow light, like yellow greeny light. And it is, I'm assuming, pretty long. But again, we didn't go all the way through because I thought something was going to jump out and scare us at the end. But all they do is turn the lights off and ask Mr. Boots to stomp, because that's apparently how he manifests, is like stomping of work boots.
Interesting.
So I didn't go all the way in the tunnels, but there were photos of him, and I did have my EMF reader with me, and I did get some evidence in the boiler room and even in the tunnel itself. So I think, you know, there's some activity. In the room next to it, I got a ton of EMF activity. It used to be a kitchen, actually. And we brought our laser grid pointer with us, and my cousin was using it to see, you know, if any of the, for those who haven't used it, to see if any of the grid gets distorted. Typically that could be a spirit moving. And we didn't have a lot of luck with that, but tons of activity with an EMF reader in that area.
Interesting. It was a kitchen. What is it now?
It's just a display room now. They have a display set up of, there's like a wax figure or something over a cooking pot and old kitchen stuff.
Oh, so like not a lot of electronics or anything?
No, not a lot of electronics, no. So we went down to the gym/prisoner of war holding cell area, which is just a crazy binary in my mind of, it was a gym when orphans lived there, and then they built cells.
What did that look like?
So you walk in, and this was underground mostly. There was it was like a subterranean level with some windows, and they had still, you walk in, and to the left they had still the springed floor for gymnastics, but they had along the right and most of the left put in cinder block cells that were all connected and had like iron doors on them. And there was even a sign that said something like, this number battalion.
How many cells were there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think.
Oh, 5 cells total?
Yeah.
I was thinking more of like the order of like 20 to 30 prisoners.
No, I don't think it was a ton of people.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And something that is really heartbreaking and beautiful also, I guess, is there was one cell where allegedly a Japanese prisoner of war was held, and he had painted a mural. They gave them paints and enrichment. He had painted a mural on the walls of the Japanese mountains and sun, and it's still there today, and you can see it.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, but also heartbreaking because he's in this cell underground with no windows, and he's like painting what his home was. So very interesting that you get to see that. But on the spring floor, my brother is a former gymnast, and I always say spirits are in death as they were in life. So if that was a place that people did gymnastics, I thought maybe it would get activity if he did some gymnastics. And he did a back handspring on the floor, and I captured the lights flashing as he did it, And I actually, anything that I had questions about, I sent to Tiff to ask them to say like, hey, is this normal? Are the lights, and they said the lights don't really flash there. And there's also an orb that seems to follow him as he moves in the video, but I'm not moving the camera. I'm holding it still. Now, we do like to debunk things, so it could be the reflection off of something, like if he has a belt and I didn't think he had anything reflective on him, but if he did, it could be producing a light,
Sure. It could have also been caused by whatever electrical disturbance was happening, right?
Oh, the light flashing.
Yeah, the light flashing. It could have just been, you said the subterranean, but there were windows, so was there light coming in that might have potentially?
No, it was late.
Okay.
It was like 8 p.m.
Oh, okay. Well, that puts that one to bed.
The lights didn't flash in person. That's why it's weird.
Oh.
I would have noticed it if they had flashed in person.
And you didn't do it slow-mo, right?
No, I did not do it slow-mo.
Okay. So.
Yeah, that's a tip from our friends at Haunted US that we did not know. If you use slow shutter, it can make it look like lights are flashing. So just a note, again, always helpful. It's our responsibility to try to debunk as much as we can. But it could have been, what I was thinking is it could have been that someone was taking a picture with a flash and I didn't note it in person. So it could go both ways.
Hi listeners! We're so excited to tell you about our partnership with Haunted US. Haunted US is an online publication that brings you credible articles on the history and specific paranormal claims of haunted locations across the country. We've even used them to research some of our episodes. Visit hauntedus.com for new haunted places every Thursday.
I really enjoyed going upstairs to Petey's room, which is the boys' dorm on the top floor. And Tiff said that typically women of childbearing age get a response here because the boys were orphans and wanting mothers. And I took many, many photos in here. And I did capture one really strange image. And we can, if you're watching on YouTube, we can pop it up. It almost looks like it's a stethoscope, a glowing stethoscope on the floor. I know. You're like, what the is that? I can't describe it any other way. It looks like, or like a serpent. I don't know. And again, I sent it to Tiff and I said, what do you think this could be? And they confirmed that there's no source of light anywhere that has caused anything like that before. Like there's no direct source of light. And honestly, the room itself is pretty dark. And this looks like it's straight up glowing. So I'd love, if you're watching on YouTube, I'd love your opinion on what this is.
I know it is not this, but it makes me think of like the glow sticks. Like a glow necklace.
That's what it looks like. It's glowing that much in a really dark room. So it's very strange. And I had actually just before been sitting there because they told us that if that window, it was like a popped out window. I don't know how you call it. Where there's like 3 sides of window panes. Like a bay window? I don't know how it's called. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
You mean like it's like an extension of the room? So it's like over, like it's not, there's not anything underneath it necessarily?
No, there is. Do you know what I'm talking about, Erica? Where there's like window here, window here, window here. What is that called?
Oh.
Is it bay window?
I don't know what that's, but I feel like maybe you're right. I think that might be a bay. Oh,
Well,
I'll look it up.
True. Any architects. But anyways, it like pops out and that's where they used to do story time with the kids specifically. So they said if you sit there on the ground cross-legged and you say like story time, that sometimes you'll feel the sensation of someone climbing into your lap. I did not have that experience there, and my cousin was going to do it, but I think she was too nervous to invite something to interact with her. Is it bay window? Haha, I know things. So I had just been sitting there, which again I thought was really interesting because I sat, didn't have any experiences, got up and thought, well, I should still take a photo of that since it's active. So very interesting. The other thing I did in the room is they have some toys sitting around, and I thought maybe that would be a great way to try to engage some of the spirits. So I actually sat on the ground with the ball and I rolled it and then I set it down and then I went and sat away from it and invited any child spirits there to play. Nothing happened. But I was trying hard to engage them, because it makes me sad also. They're just these kids that want a mother, and they had said earlier in the tour that they really wanted someone to play with them.
At least it's the type of like child ghost I can deal with.
Yeah, I know. You don't like jump scary children ghosts.
No, I do not like when there's sudden like children's laughter behind me.
That's true. That's true. So in the basement, we did a dowsing rod session, which was super cool. And we did have luck contacting some spirits. So for those that don't know, dowsing rods are rods that you hold in your hand, and the way that they move is meant to indicate a yes or a no. The room where we did this, you could hardly call it a room. It was past the cells in the basement where it opens up into like a bigger room. And then there was a place that they say the men used to like to hang out and have fun, but it was such a paranormally active site that they closed it off. And then there was another, like you had to go through another room to get to this room. And this room was sending chills down my spine because they have really thick rings and chains hooked up to the wall. So they think it was the interrogation room. And they had someone come in and confirm that it's military grade. I don't know what that means when it comes to chains and stuff, but that's what they said. It's military grade or official. I don't know. Again, sealed documents. So we did the dowsing rod session there, and we did have luck with a few different spirits. And because it's yes or no, you're able to discern typically what type of spirit they are, who they are. And I specifically sat in the chair once to kind of be like the focus of it. And I was able to interact with an Italian prisoner of war based on the responses that they gave. But another person did it and also talked to the same person. And then one of the kids sat in the chair, and it seemed to be a child's spirit that started interacting. So that's really interesting. It was a cool experience, and we were really engaged with the whole group. The whole group was welcome to ask questions after the person sitting in the chair had a chance to ask questions. So it's a really cool touch that they did, and, cool that we did have some activity and responses there. We ended in the theater, and we listened to some EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena, that were captured by other guests, and they included things like, "I was tortured here," or other statements that all seem pretty congruent with what was in the building. And it would be like you would hear us talking. It would be as if in this podcast in the background you heard someone say something and no one is talking but us. So it was cool to listen to.
That is spooky. I like EVP a lot.
I know.
I also like to call it voice box, but I know that is not a correct phrase for it.
Well, because they weren't using a spirit box. They were just using video. They was just a video.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Yeah, so it's not recording through a spirit box. It's like literally just voices that they caught on video.
Gotcha.
And I did review all of mine, and I didn't hear any EVPs, which made me kind of sad. But at least I got other stuff. So now for the other people's experiences, because that was all just my experiences of my tour group. Ghost Adventures has been here to investigate. However, I'm more interested in the day-to-day person's experience, because I think, paranormal investigators are one thing, but the average person that comes to visit is going to have probably a different experience, especially, if you don't know what an EMF reader, you might be hesitant to use it or be unsure about how you use it, etc. So primarily, I was interested in things that the owner had to say, and the current owner has given quite a few interviews on the castle itself. They were out of town while I was there, but apparently they really love to engage with the history and the hauntings of the castle. The owner claims that there's at least a dozen distinct spirits at Pythian Castle. She said that she heard a woman's voice saying hello in the entrance to the stairs, which is, like I said, you walk into this grand entryway, and then there's 2 sets of stairs that go up to the theater and dorm level. And when it was used by the Knights of Pythias, they actually had one side for women and one side for men. So on the tour, they had us go on that specific side because we want to be respectful to the spirits that are there. And so she said she walked into that area and she heard a woman say hello.
Oh, interesting. Though it kind of sounds like the Knights of Pythias. I shouldn't have said Pythagoras, because now that's all I can think of when I hear it. I did that to myself. It sounds like the spirits that dominate that place are not really from that order.
Well, there's the children's spirits that would be orphans of that order.
You're right.
Because it wasn't just any orphan. It would be if you had a member and the parents died.
Gotcha. I think I was thinking more from a perspective of like adult ghosts.
Yeah.
But yeah, children, definitely. You have me there.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think it's linked to the strong emotions or traumatic experiences there. Like, there were surely a ton of people that died there, but these prisoners of war had a very significant, probably traumatic experience.
Probably.
So it makes sense that they're popping up to me. But I'm wondering what the other distinct spirits are, or if they all fall into that category, because she didn't really say.
Yeah, you think with a place like this, there'd be more distinct spirits. Oh, no, there is the one. Oh, my goodness. Mr.
Boots.
Yes, that stomps his boots.
Yeah. Very cool. So the owner said she had this hello that she heard from a seemingly adult woman, and that a guest experienced the same thing the following week, where they walked in and heard that. There have been sightings of children running around in the upstairs rooms, which again makes sense since the dorms were up there, and the theater's also there, which was, as I said, a place that was incredibly paranormally active. There's also a woman in white that is seen near the bathrooms, and a woman in white is a common trope of like a sad woman that shows up. But she didn't say that this woman was sad, just that she's wearing white, which makes me wonder if they also held weddings there.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I imagine if it's an order that was like a large group of people, sure, I bet they had marriages there.
Yeah.
If it's like not to say that it was a social club, but like a lot of social clubs will marry people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think it's actually still an order. I think you can actually still join it. My cousin started really digging into it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think she said that. But don't quote me if you want to become a Knights of Pythias. But you don't get any credit to the castle because it's privately owned. So the owner said she herself sleeps there. I mean, people live there. And that she was woken up by spirits many times. And specifically on one occasion, she startled awake at the sound of gunshots. And she saw that there was a man standing above her in an army uniform. And she said that a lot of times the spirits will respect her and she'll say, you know, like, not tonight. Like, I'm not doing this tonight. And they'll leave her alone. And she said in that night, that's what she said, that, you know, I'm not doing this. And they let her go back to sleep.
That's interesting. How many people live there?
I think just her. But they always have someone in the castle, they said. So there was a story that they told at the beginning where the owner was away and they had either a staff or a friend or someone come watch it, and they had a paranormal experience playing games in the dining hall. And they think it's because the children ghosts wanted to play games with them, but there's always someone there.
What did they say? What games they were playing?
They were playing poker.
Poker. That's interesting.
I think it would be really interesting to sleep there.
Yeah, and interesting kids that wanted to play like poker, but I guess they just wanted to be involved.
Yeah, any game, I'm sure. People have reported hearing voices when no one is talking and they're alone in rooms, because at the end, it ends in the theater, like I said, but you do have a little bit of, or it ends in Petey's room rather, and you do have a little bit of time to like look around and come down. They just ask that you don't, you know, go anywhere that you haven't been, and that you clear out in a relatively fast manner. So it is possible that you could be alone in one of the rooms, is my point with that. People have also reported being touched by spirits. I think that would be something, unless you were notably alone in a room, that would be hard to notice, because a lot of the spaces are somewhat small and tight, and you know, you do have the people on the tour. It wouldn't be uncommon for someone to like bump you.
Yeah, I wonder how many paranormal experiences occur that people just immediately write off like that.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, somebody just like nudged me.
Yeah.
You know, there's like 12 other people in this room.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have some experiences where I felt, specifically on the stairs going down to the kitchen / Mr. Boots tunnel, I kept thinking that there was someone behind me, but I was trying to be the last person to go into the rooms because I had my EMF reader and stuff, and I don't want to be shining lights at people. And I was able to turn around and do the laser grid pointer then. But I did keep feeling like there was someone behind me. I don't know if that could have just been me, or that could be something.
You know, it could be, or it could not be. Who's to say?
Yeah, to be or not to be, that is the question.
Yeah.
So I really can't say enough about this place. It was super cool. I mean, whether you like architecture or history or the paranormal, it was just so cool to see it. Even if you're just looking for something to do on a weekend, I think it's only on weekends. It was really, really cool. And some friends that I have in the paranormal community actually even knew about it. I didn't realize it was this big of a deal, but I was talking to Cody, I think, of Sharp Side of the Paranormal, and he was like, oh, I've heard of that, and there's apparently other Pythian sites that are paranormally active. I didn't realize that it was such a big order, but very interesting. And so knowing what you know, would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
Whatever you define them as.
So like anything?
Yeah, I'd go.
Yeah.
Stay the night, whatever. It'd be fun. It'd be very interesting to tour the full area, I guess, minus the government-owned facility. Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask more about the area that's been closed off because it was so paranormally active, and as to like what activity was occurring there that made them close it off. Mm-hmm. Was it particularly like violent, or was it just very active? Was it an uncomfy, cozy feeling? You know, what was the cause?
Yeah, I think I would love to go back for a private investigation. They have like 3 different tiers of investigation that you can do, different lengths of time in the castle. And I think it would be super cool to do.
Oh, that's interesting to have like different durations of time.
Well, it's probably, you know, if you don't have a ton of equipment or you're going to do it relatively quickly, I think the smallest tier is like 9 to 12. But you can also go 9 to 1 and 9 to 2.
Gotcha. So it sounds like either way, like no matter what you pick, though, you still have it to yourself. It's not like
you do.
It's not like a wedding venue where they might double book in the same day.
No, it's a completely private investigation. And for that reason, you have to book for, I think, 6 people at least to guarantee that they make their money's worth on it. Because they also have to have someone, they will have someone there with you, because there needs to be someone that knows how to work all the lights and lock all the doors, because every single night they go through and shut everything off and lock everything up except for the living quarters. So it has to be a staff member that's the last person through.
I see. And so what piece of equipment are we going to give Erica, then lock her in a room?
I don't know. It's probably spirit box. And I'm just going to start knocking on the door. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I'm going to try to go to an adjacent room and bang on the wall.
No, because 1, that would be inventing evidence, and 2, it would scare Erica so much. But it would be cool to go, because I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, even if you break it down into bigger spaces, like the gymnasium/cells, you could definitely put a few REM pods there, a few cat balls, and then walk around with the spirit box and the EMF reader. You could even leave a laser grid set up. So I think there's a lot of potential there, and I would love to go back. Yeah,
I would like to visit.
Yeah, and I really like, again, that they lean into the history and hauntings. So if you're in the Springfield, Missouri area, check it out. If you can get Tiff as your tour guide, do it. Thank you to the owner and Tiff for being so open about answering questions and sharing information. And tune in next Thursday to see what haunted places we discuss next. Stay spooky.